a whole show dedicated to stuff. All right, we got a lot to talk about all today on Locked On Tigers.
You are Locked On Tigers, your daily Detroit Tigers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Locked On Tigers. I'm, of course, your host, Scott Bentley. Today is Tuesday, September 10th, 2024. Thank you so much for making Locked On Tigers your first listen. Every single day, we are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Just visit FanDuel.com to get started. Welcome in, welcome all, everybody. Happy Tuesday. So today, Tigers had an off day on Monday. So today we are going to have an entire show that's basically like one giant segment of stuff, right? If you're a listener of the show, you're aware that we have what went right, we have what went wrong, and then we have stuff at the end, which I originally was a temporary name that I only wanted to have just until we got a better name for it. And keeping the name as just stuff has received overwhelming support from the listenership here. So it will continue, at least for the time being, to just be called stuff. But basically, with this often, there's a lot of conversations I've wanted to have, and we just haven't had time for, because the Tigers are playing really good baseball at the major league level in September. And so usually, the last several years, really ever since I took over as host of this show, 3.5 years ago, the September has been used for me for big picture conversations and all of these, other storylines that I've wanted to catch up on and want to talk about before the season ends. Well, we've really got that opportunity because all eyes are actually focused on the field in, the middle of September, which it's been a while since that has been the case. So want to take this off day, take advantage of it, and really knock out some kind of big picture organizational conversations that I've wanted to have. And there's some small fun stuff trickled in there as well. And then obviously we'll preview Colorado. We'll also talk about the rest of the season, kind of talk about the what to watch for and what we're hoping for the rest of the way. Again, just kind of a hodgepodge of stuff. So let's start off by talking about the minor league season. And this will probably take up a decent chunk of the show today. The Whitecap season has officially come to an end. Their regular season has ended. They did not make the postseason this year. The Flying Tigers season has ended, but they made the postseason. And then the Erie Seawolves, I believe, had one, I want to say, series left, maybe one home series left, and then they will start the postseason where they will go yet again. Erie has been a juggernaut of sorts, making the postseason quite a lot lately. Obviously, had the historical season last year, the Erie Seawolves did. So just as the regular season winds down for the minor leagues, I think and we'll obviously do this a lot in the offseason as well, and we'll talk kind of big picture with some prospects and go a little bit more in depth on some of these names. But I do want to just list off some of my biggest takeaways from the organization this year again, as the minor league season comes to an end. The first one, and this is not necessarily first for any reason other than they're just big names at this point. Max Clark and Kevin McGonagal are good at baseball. Kevin McGonagal is a fantastic hitter. I think he's quickly going to evolve into one of the better pure hitting prospects. There's some questions defensively. I don't think he's going to be an elite defender. I don't think he's going to exactly burn you on the base paths, but that dude can hit like crazy. And so he is really good. And he is going to be really good. And Max Clark is really good. And there's still a lot of adjustments that I'm sure he wants to make. There's a lot of adjustments that I'm sure the organization wants him to make. There's organizations. There's adjustments that I am looking for him to make. Obviously, the first two are all anybody cares about. But like my point is there's still room for growth. This is not me saying that he is major league ready and he's a finished product. And like in the last few weeks of the season, he came back down to earth a little bit after getting off to a really hot start when he first got promoted from Lakeland to West Michigan. So I think that really my biggest takeaway is next year, I want to see both of those gentlemen tear it up in Erie. And I'm not saying that they even have to start the season next year in Erie if they want them to, if the organization feels it's more productive and more beneficial, I guess is the word I was looking for them to start off in West Michigan again and then have to kind of earn their way up to Erie. That's fine and dandy. I'm not in a huge rush to get these guys, just shoot them through the system. But I do want to see them not only play, but play well in Erie by the time, we roll around to September of 2025. So that is one of my biggest takeaways is that those two guys are really good and are going to be a part of this Tigers core going forward, even if that is still a couple of years away for them, their windows to really open up. The next one is that Jackson Jobe is pitching at Comerica Park at some point next season. I talked about it a little bit yesterday. Was that yesterday? Yesterday or Friday? I don't know. Time all blends together. I talked about this a little bit earlier in the week and talked about how, it's not a guarantee that this dude is going to be in the rotation in 2025 to open the season. All right. I'm not saying it's an opening day guarantee. I am willing to put a little bit on the line that it is a guarantee that barring obviously health, at some point next season, he's pitching in Comerica Park. I find it very hard to believe that if he's fully healthy all year, that by, post deadline or second half of next season, he's not wearing an Old English D and pitching in Comerica. He's really good. He has some adjustments that he continues to make, but he's really, really good, continues to be really, really good, is one of, if not the best pitching prospect in baseball currently. And he's ranked that highly for a reason. And I think it's really, really exciting that he's getting called up to AAA. We talked about that in that same conversation earlier, right? About how I think that is kind of writing on the wall that they want to give him a look going into next year. It's not a guarantee that he'll take that opportunity and run with it or that he's guaranteed to be in the rotation. And I think they should still get pitching depth and starting pitching depth specifically in the offseason. But I do think that there is a world in which this dude is pitching for the Tigers in the first half of next year. And I think it's almost a guarantee that he's up at some point in the second half of next year. And that kind of ties into my next point here, my next takeaway from this minor league season. And that is that this organization has figured out how to develop pitching. I think one of the common misconceptions about player development in baseball specifically is that they judge development based on how many star players come out of an organization, or how many all-star players come out of an organization. I think the Tigers pitching development at the minor league level has done an incredible job of just getting the most out of everybody. That doesn't mean they're turning every single pitcher into Tarik Skubal or Justin Verlander, but it does mean that they are getting productivity from every single person pretty much that goes on a mound in this organization. And that is unbelievably important and impressive, right? And so when we look at the development of the organization, there is, and I bring this up all the time, you can really oversimplify this. And I'm not saying it's this to a T or that this is an exact science, but if you break it up into four groups and you do, again, I've said this a lot before, if you listen to the show frequently, there's pitching development at the minor league level, pitching development at the major league level, hitting development at the minor league level, and hitting development at the major league level. And I think that the Tigers are very close to being solid in all four of those. I still think there's a ways to go in the hitting development at the major league level. That's kind of been the one that's dragged along and the Tigers organization has had trouble with. But as we'll talk about later, they're taking massive steps in the right to forward in minor league hitting development. And we've known for a while that they have incredible pitching development at both levels. So to really see that case and that take only get stronger and stronger throughout the season and only become more and more kind of objective and factual is super intriguing for the future and super reassuring for the right now. It's like, okay, thank goodness. Like, this organization has needed an identity for so long, and they have finally received that in this incredible pitching development that has come out of the organization. There's a couple of players that I want to talk about as well that are involved with that, and we will do that right after this. Got to talk to y'all about our friends over at GameTime. GameTime is the best in the business. So many fantastic features, including their new feature, GameTime Picks. GameTime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste your time searching through thousands of tickets. It is phenomenal, and there are so many great features besides just their new one that is GameTime Picks. You have all-in pricing, so you can toggle this feature and get your total up front. There's no surprise fees at checkout, anything else. You just get your 100% full total up front. It is fantastic. They have seat views as well, so you can get a panoramic of your seat before you purchase it. The lowest price guarantee will GameTime will credit you 110% of the difference if you find a seat in the same section and row for less somewhere else. And it's all backed by the most flexible customer service policy in the entire ticketing industry. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download GameTime today. What time is it? Game time. All right, everybody, welcome back here. Segment 2, Locked On Tigers. Appreciate y'all for tuning in, as always, making us your first listen every single day. Shout out to the everydayers that do tune in every day. We will, of course, be back tomorrow, recapping Game 1 against the Colorado Rockies. We'll preview that series here later on in the show. After you make us your first listen, make Locked On MLB your second listen with host Paul Sullivan, a.k.a. Sully. He's getting you prepped for those playoffs that are right around the corner, and your Detroit Tigers are knocking on the door there. Talking about the AL wildcard race for sure. So be sure to check that out. Again, Locked On MLB, available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So we were talking about pitching development before the break there, and I think that some of the players individually that really jump out for this conversation to really drive the point home that they're just getting the most out of everybody, like Jaden Hamm, right? Somebody that has just flew up, whatever it is, prospect rankings throughout the season, right? A guy that was not on too many people's radar going into the year, and now we're talking about as one of the better pitching prospects in the entire organization. And you know, people are talking about the run on his fastball being borderline elite, right? Like a fastball with velocity and with a ton of movement. He goes over the top. I love watching him pitch, and I think that that's a guy that they're like, okay, we think that we can get a legitimate rotation arm out of this guy. And then you have your guys that we've seen a lot at the major league level this year, right? Guys that we didn't expect, Gunther, right? Herder, Hannafy, like those guys that we didn't expect to get legitimate innings out of at the major league level this year, and they have received. And so I think that is really the biggest test of good development is that. It's getting the most out of as many people as possible. It's not just, okay, how many, elite players do you create? Everybody can't be a 10 WAR player, right? If that was the case, then they wouldn't be 10 WAR players. So it's all about getting the most out of everybody. And this organization, I think this year really did a fantastic job of continuing the foundation that's already been laid in that department a lot. On the hitting side of things, we haven't really talked about hitting too terribly much yet. I think it's pretty clear that the Tigers won the Michael Lorenzen trade, and that's a trade that on this show we talked about like that was a huge win, and I was very frustrated with the Erod situation. And I think my exact wording was, you can fail a test and still get a question right, right? Like I thought the deadline was a failure, but I thought that trade specifically was really good. And Hao Yu Lee had a fantastic season and dealt with a little bit of injury stuff and maybe slowed down a little bit at the end, but fantastic. Is going to be in AAA to start off the season next year. And that's really, really good for, again, not only development, but good for, trade resumes and trust in the front office as well. I know that this deadline, we'll talk about this deadline here in a second, was kind of iffy for some people. And last year's was certainly for again, Erod and a lot of reasons as well. But Hao Yuli's been a great addition to this organization and had a really solid year. So if we're talking about positive takeaways, he's certainly one as well. Another takeaway I've had is that this organization is trying to be really deep at catcher. And like you have Briseño, who is, kind of everybody's dark horse to be a huge riser going forward. He already is like borderline a top 10 prospect or in the top 10 on a lot of lists. He had an injury this season that sidelined him for a lot of the year, but I think he's the guy that AJ Hinch said he had a man crush on in spring training of this year. Just hit ropes, right? Consistently. It feels like every time he hits the ball, he's crushing it. It's a laser somewhere. Questions about whether he'll be a catcher long-term. And then, like, similar to that, you have Thayron Lorenzo, right? Like the key piece that the Tigers got in the Jack Flaherty trade there. And I think that that's another takeaway is that Lorenzo is incredibly intriguing. You can say whatever you want about the deadline, still have your reservations about how it was handled, say that they should have gotten more, right? Et cetera, et cetera. We had those conversations a lot when the deadline happened. But the fact of the matter is, this dude has been incredible since joining the Tigers organization on the offensive side of the ball. He's got an OPS over 1,000 so far as a member of the Tigers organization. So at a bare minimum, again, no matter what your opinion is still of the deadline, they at least brought in a guy that is incredibly intriguing going into 2025. It also feels like every year there is at least one hitter that kind of flies up the rankings out of nowhere. And that happens in good, healthy organizations that are good at player development. That happens all the time, to the Dodgers and the Rays, right? They get and like the Brewers, the Guardians, right? Like you look around, there's so many organizations that do that. And the Tigers have had that for a few years in a row now, right? You obviously Kerry Carpenter's like the big one, but there's been a few guys, right? Winfield Perez this year, I think, was somewhat of a surprise. Like you have this again, like development system that allows growth of offensive talent as well. And I think this year, now this guy is not anywhere close to the major league level and is still very far away from becoming a Major League Baseball player. So it's not quite the same as those two guys that I just listed out. But Frangerber Montilla is so fun to watch. And he struggled a lot when he got promoted this year and is ending the season on kind of a low note because of how much he struggled. This is a guy that nobody knew about going into the season. I'm sure a lot of people still aren't super familiar with, and just absolutely crushed down in the complex and hopefully can get the wheels turning there in the rookie league and then in low A ball in 2025. So we'll see what happens, but like he was just, the fact that every year we're talking about, surprise riser through the system and surprise, surprise name that nobody knew about or that nobody saw coming, I think is good. Again, that's a sign of a healthy organization that they're trying to get the most out of everybody, no matter if you're a big name or not. And then my last takeaway here is kind of a deep cut. And again, we'll go much more in depth on some of the individual players that, in the system, and we'll have plenty more takeaways and plenty more conversations about this organization and the minor league system in the offseason. But because he homered, I think in the last game of the regular season, I'm going to bring this one up now. Roberto Campos still has a chance, everybody. This guy was signed by the Avila era for, I believe it was the most money the Tigers had ever given an international free agent in the history of their franchise. He was 15 or 16 years old. He was kind of like he was like the, I don't know, like a unicorn or like the Loch Ness monster, or he was like a wise tale. Like no one even saw him. And we were like, oh yeah, we're all hyped about this guy. But no one even saw him for like 3 years. He was folklore. And then he finally came over and he just did nothing but struggle. He struggled mightily. And this year, he did pretty well. All right. He wasn't like the MVP, down there in West Michigan, but like he had a solid season, showed a little bit of pop, hit for a really solid average, walked a decent amount. I'd like to see him walk a little bit more, showed off the athleticism in the outfield a little bit. Like he had a solid year. And he's still only 21 years old, believe it or not, because of how young he was when the Tigers signed him. So that's my last takeaway is I'm not saying he's going to be what we thought he was going to be at one point, right? Which was like this superstar 5-tool athlete that the Avila era promised us. But like he still has a chance to be a productive ball player at the major league level, I think. I have not given up hope on Roberto Campos. And if you call me a fool, I will accept that. I will take that after 5 years removed or whatever it is from signing him. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what he does in 2025 and where he starts off in the organizational ladder. If he's in high single A or maybe he finds himself in Erie at some point next season. Okay, got a lot more kind of smaller stuff to talk about. Want to talk a little bit about Tarik Skubal, Matt Vierling, the Tigers in one-run games, the playoff push, Colorado. Got a lot more to talk about still. All right, we'll do all of that right after this. Got to talk to y'all today about our friends over at FanDuel. You've heard us talk about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Plenty. Well, we have something a little different for you today. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial on an NFL Sunday ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then, with a YouTube TV-based plan, you'll be able to watch every single regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. Just visit FanDuel.com and download America's #1 sportsbook. All right, everybody, welcome back here. Segment 3, third and final segment, Locked On Tigers. Appreciate y'all for tuning in, as always. So, want to talk a little bit about Tarik Skubal. A really quick thing here. Just what a great year for this guy right on the field. And everybody talks about he's going to win the American League Cy Young, and he deserves to win it. We talk about him all the time. That's still a human being in there, and he is the Tigers nominee for the Roberto Clemente Man of the Year award. And I just think that's so awesome. Him and his wife both have been doing fantastic work. The Tigers Twitter, X page rather, made an entire video and had an article and kind of had a breakdown involving all of the work and the organization, the one main organization that he's specifically kind of focusing on and whatnot. And his family has just done so much as well. It's just really cool to see. This is a game at the end of the day. And it's a game that I love more than dang near anything on this planet. But to be at the peak of your game and still be the type of person who, him and his family, again, his wife doing a ton of work here as well, to go out and be a part of the community and really put his time and resources into helping other people is just fantastic. Matt Boyd was always just kind of the peak example of that in this organization for so many years as well. And so for Skubal to be not only the leader on the field and to be that dog and that workhorse on the field, but to be somebody that these young players can look up to off the field as well, I think is just really great. And doing a lot of really important work. So go support. Again, the organization is on the Tigers Twitter. You can go learn more about that and help him and his family and support them as well. Another thing that went public that I found interesting was Evan Petzold of the Freep. We love Evan Petzold of the Freep here on Locked On Tigers. Great beat writer, one of the best that this fine city has to offer. And we cite his work a lot on this show. And he put out an article over the weekend, maybe Sunday or Monday, that talked about how Matt Vierling was a leader for this team. And then he tweeted out or posted, I'm never going to get used to that. Sure, X, whatever. He put out a quote from AJ Hinch about how important Matt Vierling was to the clubhouse and how important he was to the leadership. And he was kind of the glue guy for everybody. And he's not that old. He's in his late 20s. But because this lineup is so young, that's the guy that's played in the World Series, Matt Vierling. Say what you will about the talent level or what you think his role is, etc. That's a dude that has played in the World Series, not just been on the roster, played. And so I think for him to be that vocal leader in the clubhouse, I think the Tigers lost Miggy, and as the pieces from that previous core in that previous era slowly kind of deteriorated and fell away, they lost that big voice in the clubhouse. And so I'm not in the clubhouse. I don't know if Matt Vierling's screaming and challenging guys and firing everybody up. I don't know what kind of leader he is, but just to know that he's made adjustments to his swing. He's been a better than league average hitter. He's been a versatile defender. He's athletic on the base paths, and he is bringing that in the clubhouse. I think is something that deserves credit and that I will appreciate about Matt Vierling. Something from the other great Evan that this fan base has as a resource, Evan Woodberry of M Live, another fantastic beat writer for this team, put out there this weekend that I found super fascinating and immediately wrote down to have a conversation about, was the Detroit Tigers have had a whopping 35% of their games this year all be decided by one run. Now, they're over 500 in those games, but it's close. I think Woodberry said they were 26-24 or 24-22. There's something around there. But they are a couple of games over 500 in one-run games. I have a couple takeaways from that. Two main ones, right? One is that is great experience for young players. As frustrating and as, gut-wrenching and heart-sweating as those games are, that's great experience to have. You want your young players to get thrown into the fire and have to make adjustments and really learn how to win close games as early in their careers as you can. So I think that that's good for development, that they're playing in a lot of close games. I also think that if you go back in time and you want to complain about what the Tigers did or didn't do last winter, it's really easy to look at that and go, wow, could you imagine if they had maybe gotten one bat and one high leverage reliever out of the bullpen that could get strikeouts? We could be talking about having a record similar to the Twins, just with, I say just, those aren't like easy gets, but you get my point with those two acquisitions. And then I think if you're not a person that likes to look in the past, right? The future is all we have. Let's focus on the possibilities to come, not what we didn't do in the past. Like, I think that should be all the indication you need to go out and get those two types of players this upcoming season, for 2025, rather. Like you need another bat to put into the lineup that has some pop to it, and you need at least one high leverage reliever that can get strikeouts. And I think that you will see A, not as many one-run games, hopefully, but B, better success even in the one-run games that you do have. So that was something I found interesting. Shout out to, again, Evan Woodberry for that. Let's end by talking about the playoff push here. So the Tigers are 3.5 out of the time of this recording. The Twins play tonight. I'm recording this before the Twins game, so that I can watch A, the Twins, but B, Monday Night Football. So they're either going to be 3 or 4 games back going into game 1 against the Rockies. This is fun. And like, no matter what comes out of this, this is like objectively fun. I guess fun is inherently subjective, but you get my point. Like, it doesn't matter if they miss out on the postseason. This will still be one of the most fun Septembers that this team has had in a long time. And it's set up to make it close, right? It is. The Rockies are dreadful on the road. The only team that's worse than the Rockies on the road this year is the White Sox, because they're worse than everybody at everything. You have Bradley Baylock, TBD. Those are the 3 pitchers you're facing. So it's 1, and then who knows who's going to pitch games 2 and 3. From the Tigers' perspective, you have Kader Montero, Casey Mize, and Tarik Skubal. You actually have 3 set starters for a whole series. That is a minor miracle, given how the last couple of months have gone. So to have like 3 true set starting pitchers in a 3-game set, honestly, is great. I think that's going to be great for the bullpen as well. And you have to win these games. Like, if you want to put any sort of belief out there that this is possible, you gotta win. Now, I've said that a lot over the last month, and they've done it. They've put the money where their mouth is, and they have won these games that I've been like ultimatum. You kind of have to win or you're out of it. They've done that a lot. And that's going to continue because you have Baltimore, Kansas City, Baltimore are your 3 series following this Rockies series. Then you end with Tampa Bay, who's not really in the wild card hunt, but like kind of around the same record as you. Then you end the season with who do you end the season with? Is it the White Sox? Thank goodness. So that'll be nice. But it's one of those things where you want to convince people, you want to get more and more people on board with this. You got to take care of business against these Rockies. The last thing we'll say, and then we'll preview a little bit more of this these next couple of days specifically, but Winfield Perez and Reese Olson are both rehabbing down in Toledo, in AAA Toledo as it stands right now. Imagine a world in which the Tigers are, 2 or 3 games out of the wild card with 2 weeks left in the season, and they get one of their best starting pitchers back and a guy who is very quietly one of their best hitters in June and July back. Wouldn't that be kind of fun? Could get really fun. It could be really, really timely. The Twins play the Angels. The Angels are really bad, but we can hope. We'll end with this. At the end of the day, this team is learning how to win, and they are playing meaningful baseball at the major league level in September. And that is new to pretty much everybody on this roster, nearly everybody that is currently on this roster. It's still pretty unlikely that they make the playoffs. It is, right? I'm gonna give it to you straight. It's still they're still on the outside looking in. I would still not call it likely, but the experience of these guys playing these types of games in September will be so unbelievably beneficial going forward that let's root for it. If it does happen, fantastic. I will be in tears, right? I will be crying. That would be awesome. But if it doesn't mean the season's a failure. That would still be a pretty big win of a season if they're just on the, barely on the outside looking in, no matter how much it ends up hurting in the moment if they do miss out. Also to add on, pointed out to me by a couple of listeners, the Tigers do not own the tiebreaker against the Royals or the Twins. They do own the tiebreaker against the Red Sox and the Mariners. For those who aren't aware, there is no longer a game 163 tiebreaker. So the Tigers will have to finish with a better record than the Royals or Twins, whoever is in that third wild card at the end of the season. If they tie, it will go to one of those two teams. So they're kind of another game added on to that, again, increasing to the unlikeliness. But that all being said, go Angels, baby. Thanks for making Locked On Tigers your first listen every single day. Shout out to the everydayers that do tune in every day. We will, of course, be back tomorrow. I appreciate you all. Fun little off-day episode just talking about, again, just got a lot of storylines, news, and notes from the organization that I've kind of picked up on over the last couple of weeks. We'll be back tomorrow right on schedule, hopefully with a win against the Rockies. Peace and love. Going to therapy's dope. I'll catch y'all then, baby. Go Tigers.